let's say, controlling your lust for food or something similar to that, and you think you're making progress, and then you might go through a period of feeling like no matter what I do, no matter how hard I work, no matter how much I program my computer, no matter how much I want to overcome that, I'm simply not making any progress. Now, which there is no truth to. That's a con of the vehicle. That's a con for one reason only. The vehicle is still hunting for an escape hatch to not still be under your thumb. You know what we mean by that? The vehicle does not want, it has never wanted, and it still doesn't want, and it will find more and more hidden ways to keep from having to be under the thumb of the mind. Okay? Now, and it will find ways to make it appear to you, and even have you believe that I have lost the ability to improve in this direction or that one. And there's only one reason the vehicle would pull such a shenanigan on you, and it's because it wants out. It wants to, it may not have brought it to the surface, to your conscious mind. It may not have translated thought of leaving the classroom or of getting out from under the pressure of the discipline. But in actuality, that's what the vehicle still, at times, is forever trying to sneak in some way to have, is to be at peace, to be relieved from your constant hammering on it in the areas that are difficult for it. It may, like it may say, well, it's not that I want to go back in the world. That world doesn't appeal to me, you know. But if I could just have peace, if I could just not have this constant struggle. And why am I struggling so? Because I'm not making, and I'm not even making any progress. Now, all of that is simply a con game. All you do during that period is your faithful best effort, and let that period pass. There is nothing that you could do at this point of having proven your desire to complete this task and to do it successfully. There is actually no even failure that you could do as far as any discipline is concerned that would merit your throwing in the towel or giving up on your task or not completing it. Now, this isn't by any means a justification for you to feel better about and give in to the vehicle's doing what it shouldn't be doing. In other words, you can mistranslate this and say, well, my teacher said there's nothing really worth that much trouble, so I'll just go ahead and let the vehicle do what it wants to. No, don't forget, part of that sentence was, as long as you faithfully employ your best effort at improvement and conquering. Usually, when you can't conquer something, it's because you're approaching it wrong. And anytime you're having difficulty conquering something, you ought to look at it and say, what is it about the way I'm approaching this discipline that is prohibiting a better success rate? And try a different approach. Try a new game on the computer. Try a new program. If that program doesn't seem to work. Or maybe your computer said, I've heard that program so many times, and it just wants to ignore it. And you have let it come back with that, ignoring it so many times that the program is not effective. So exercise your imagination and find a better program, one that is more interesting, that is more challenging, that wouldn't give the computer any rebellion. It wouldn't give it a leg to stand on as far as being tired of hearing that program. In other words, a lot of times you still approach the program on a put yourself down basis. I've got to stop doing that. That's really an elementary approach to it. You see what we're saying? Because that's like spanking your computer rather than being more intellectual about it, more objective about it, and taking more the genetic approach. Understanding why it is that your vehicle is dealing with it. Know that if you were in the world, that if that vehicle were permitted to do as it pleased, that there would probably be a cycle appearing at this age of that vehicle that would be giving you the difficulty that it is giving you. The only difference is that if you were in the world, you'd be giving into it more than you're giving into it. Do you follow what we're saying? But don't be surprised at reoccurrences or anything that would cause you to be discouraged. It's just simply not worth it. You should be happier to be in the class that you're in and doing what you're doing. And it's not something that you can go and say, I'm going to be happy, even though a certain amount of that doesn't do you any harm either. But we are pleased. Why shouldn't you be pleased? We are pleased with your efforts, even though at times you may not think we are when we're calling things to your attention that need for you to work on. We are actually extremely pleased with every single member of the class. There's not one. Now, I hate to tell you this, in a sense. Part of me wants to tell you, the other part doesn't want you to relax. But T and I are very, very proud of every single one of you and your efforts. And we know what you have had to deal with. Now, because we know how crude those animals are that you are occupying, and how stubborn they are, and how primitive they are, and how they don't, they aren't very prone to accept the kind of logic and reasoning at the next level. They're not familiar with it. They've never been there. They at times have trouble buying it. Even though a lot of times you can break through and make some reason with the brain, enough that it will make an overcoming a little less difficult for you. But there are a lot of aspects that the brain will appear to be willing to accept your discipline. And in actuality, it isn't. In other words, the brain will seem to accept it. But when it comes down to the action, there's still rebellion from the vehicle. So it's almost like saying, well, now, wait a minute. I explained that to you. I thought you could understand it, and you bought it. But now here I'm confronted with it, and you're not, you're still acting in your old way. What in the world is the matter with you? Well, I'm afraid there aren't enough years, even if you had a 100-year cycle to do this task, to validate each programming that vehicle has had for the generations that it has had in its genes. You understand what we're saying? You don't have enough years in a lot of the serious difficult areas to add a good program in repetition to equal the number of negative programs or primitive programs that have caused that problem to be yours. Actually, a lot of that programming isn't even negative. It's only negative to you because of who you are. It's not negative for the vehicle. It's timely for the vehicle. It's normal for the vehicle. There's nothing wrong with those characteristics. They're only wrong from next level viewpoint. They're only wrong from advanced evolutionary thinking. And nobody, including your vehicle, likes to have you put it down and make it think that it is so bad. Now, in other words, you've got to look at your vehicle as an adult would look at a child and realize that it has learned very little discipline and has learned very little control. And you've got a task. A part of that task is to try to keep your mind from being preoccupied with the vehicle's interfering lower vibrations. That's really in other words, one of the main reasons you're here, don't forget, is what you're putting in the air for these people. What is the head thing? And the strength that it takes you to deal with a primitive vehicle. You follow that? But if you would look at the interference of the primitive vehicle as merely something that gets in your way of where your mind should be on how to bring in more mind and bring your consciousness of your next level mind into full focus. That's your main task. Your main task is not, believe it or not, getting the vehicle under perfect control. That's a side task. That's not the main task. The main task is getting the next level mind, the effort that it takes to get the next level mind into conscious focus. To bring it in enough that it's more distant and it's more objective from in order to handle the animal that you're in. Now, even when you bring that mind into, if you could bring that mind in to 100% consciousness, and you are still inside that animal, you would not stop that animal's reflexes, its desire to still act at its level, at its normal level. You would have just simply learned how to be a better child psychologist in handling your vehicle. But you're not going to stop it. You're just going to learn. What your desire is to have it not interfere with your purpose. Do you follow that? But the main thing that we wanted to say to you is, don't let anything be reason enough for serious discouragement. There's nothing at this point that is worth it. Okay? You want to add something to that?
The only thing that I'll try to add this, I don't know if I can say it clearly enough, but the things that are happening in the world now, I don't know if you can actually see them or as well as we can see them, but and because your minds may not be into your vehicle enough where you can know what the next level things are that are happening at this time. But let me add that. Did I make that sense? In other words,
what the next level is doing now.
Right, what they're doing now. And what you're doing in relationship to what is happening in the world. And what's so bad about this task is that you never get any encouragement. We don't have encouragement meaning, we can say to you that we feel like you're doing a good job. But the next level doesn't come to us and say you're doing a good job. The only thing that we see, know that that we're doing okay, is by what is happening in the world. Plus what, in other words, the gradual changeover that is happening in the world. And this applies to so many different departments. In other words, what humans put into their vehicle, how you have to work to change over the way they consume because they're not consuming properly. in order to build the kind of vehicle that Next Level wants to have, well, whatever the Next Level wants to have as the next vehicle, I guess. It doesn't mean that they will look differently, but the characteristics of the vehicle is what they're concerned about. But the vehicles are fine to look at, but how they perform and how they think isn't very good.
And how healthy they are,
Right,
both mentally and physically.
So you have to take all of these things into consideration: the environment, the thinking, everything that happens in the world has to go into a process of change, upgrading, so that it can be improved upon and grow to become what the Next Level wants to have happen. Now, each little thing that you have to deal with, whether it's diet, whether it's sensuality, whether it's being content with whatever you're faced with or whatever you have to face, whatever it is, every time you conquer that, meaning you don't give into it, then you help the world out there to become what it's supposed to become. Excuse me. Now, the only time you will find out what your work is accomplishing is probably when we step onto the spacecraft and we can see where the Next Level wanted this world to be at the time of our departure.
Yes. What stage of change and improvement in the evolutionary process they hoped to accomplish by your presence here? Now the strongest two things that I can think of that humans have to conquer, and that is diet and sensuality. A lot of things are based on those two things. And it's very difficult for humans to change the way they consume, because they have all of these fast food things that have popped up in the past 20 years or something. Most of the food that is served as fast food items isn't really good for you. It's just something to put into your tummy because your tummy's growling and it needs something. And even television programs you need a candy bar to cover for your growly stomach. And it helps you to get by until dinner time. Or Twinkies, like you see a commercial on television where they talk about the children and the husband are getting ready to walk out the door, and the wife hollers to him and says, "Aren't you going to have any breakfast?" And he says, "We'll have either dolphin or something." He says, "But I've got Hostess, these Hostess donuts and Twinkies and cupcakes." In the end.
That's programming people to feed junk into their system. And it's all wasted nutrition. Now, when you think of what has to happen in the world, and the progress that is being made, like even just this past week, I believe they talked more about fat, cholesterol, and now this morning on the news we saw where insurance companies aren't going to, they're going to raise the insurance rate of anybody who has blood pressure over 140 over 90. And they feel like it will force people to do something about their blood pressure.
They're either going to raise your rates or give you less benefit.
And so, see, everybody, all these little things are happening. The government is even coming in talking about diets and how important diet is, and that fats and cholesterol and proper nutrition, and how fruit and vegetables and things are really better for you than anything. The beef people, the cattle people, are even growing their cattle now to have less fat
That cut down in the past 10 years. That cut down 35 to 40% of the fat yield in beef.
Now, you've got to, if you can think as a member of the next level, and without getting too discouraged, there are, all of these changes are happening because of you. Because we are here at this time. Now, it's kind of hard to believe that.
As a result of it.
As a result of it. In other words, you are a talisman, so to speak. A magnetic center that will help change this over into something that the next level wants to have happen. And if you look back over everything that has happened, you can see the relationship between our tastes and what happens in the world. And you can say, well, how do we know that you didn't pick up on what the world was going through? Well, that's like saying what came first, the egg or the chicken. You know, you can believe what you want to. But why should we be concerned about these things if it wasn't because of what we're doing, of the purpose that we're here for? Otherwise, we would be doing other things, right? Why should we care what the world is developing to be? We hope not to be here. So it's our task to see that this world grows in the right way so that it will be what the next level wants it to become. Remember, it's in the process of becoming. There's no way that it can't become what the next level wants. There may not be very many people on the planet toward the end, but it will be what the next level wants.
Yes, someone said in the segment, if the, well, not these words, but it said something about if the progress continued the way it does, that it might be possible that the humans would reach such and such an advanced condition. There's no way they're not going to reach it. In other words, if the next level doesn't have a garden that it's not going to have yield from. It's going to reach it. It may lose a great many plants in the process, but it will even use, should it lose great many plants, those remaining at that time will even receive more concentrated forward motion because of the experience of having great losses. But they're not going to throw the effort that has been made from point one of totally primitive man to now down the drain. They're just not going to. Even if millions were wiped off the planet with a nuclear bomb, there would still be many, many, many less that because of that bomb experience would accelerate several thousand years in a matter of 100 years. And so there is not going to be a wasted garden. Do you follow that? It's just simply not going to happen. They're learning by all of this experience, believe it or not. The next level is learning still how to better have yield and how to better tend and how to have the end product reach the result at a better pace. And there's never a new garden that goes through this process where the next level is not improving their technique of gardening. So it's not that it's an old hat thing with them that they've done so many times that this one is just going through the paces. There's a great deal that the next level is learning about this process, and they're constantly experimenting, and they let the process of the humans be the tools of that experimentation. And they will still always turn negatives where they can into positives. Whether it's what happens as a result of extreme pollution from automobiles or in the seas and the oceans, they'll make adjustments so that the end result will not be seriously affected. And at most times, the end result will even be accelerated because they will learn how to make a positive of that seeming negative. The only reason thought of to be a negative by the humanists because they are looking up, and they receive something, they receive a signal from the next level. Those who are looking for goodness receive a signal that says, that's not too good. You ought to be changing this. You ought to be doing this. And they think that the reason they're thinking that way is because of environmental reasons. And in a sense it is. But they're just being used to assist in the gardening process, just as the machinery is used by the farmer.
Sir?
Okay? Answer? Okay. Thank you. We'll cease this now.
Let's say there are 37 of us. Well, there are 37 of us. And each of us has different things that we have to overcome, right? So let's say that
None are exactly the same. It's all a little different package.
they may be in the same category, but because of our being 37 different kinds of minds in here, in vehicles, and consequently we'd have 37 different things to overcome. Now let's say that those are your assignments. In other words, in the process, the things that you as an individual have to overcome, that they are your assignment in overcoming in order to put into the ether of the world your particular little cup of tea, so that that area would be corrected in the world by your going through what you have to go through. And so I think if you look at it in that way, in other words, it's an assignment for you to overcome what you have to overcome. Our assignment is what we have to overcome. And in the process of overcoming, then the ingredients that you use, that you are overcoming, will more than be put into the ether of the world, and the changes will be taking place, or will happen in the world because of what you are overcoming. Can you all see what I'm talking about? So in a sense, you have a task, and if you can keep that in your mind, whether it's controlling your vehicle to the point that where you might say something that is a little sarcastic or cutting to somebody, that how many people in the world have that temperament? And if you can control it, can't you, and get it under control, then you can't help but send it out as a beacon to the ones in the world who have that same category. In other words, it's like you're caught in a little beam of light that you send out to that individual. If you're having trouble with sensuality, probably most everybody has that problem, and everybody in the world has that problem. So you need more of that characteristic going into the work. Can you understand that? And this goes on down to everything that you're dealing with, because all of you have something that has to be overcome in the world in order to upgrade it and bring it to a more refined state. And you as individuals know how to bring it to a refined state, because this is what we have been teaching.
You know, a woman was recently honored for a genetic study which proved that genes communicate with each other, even from one body of cells to another. In other words, they don't even have to be touching. They don't even have to be of the same organism. That genes can communicate with each other, can actually influence other genes. And of course you know that, but they know that, and there is a communication between genes. And as just as, let's say, you take a certain combination of genes that through certain, because of certain breeding patterns, an offspring is extremely alike a parent, or let's say the two offspring are extremely alike, like identical twins frequently are like a mother and a child frequently are, when their characteristics, because of the heritage, are the very dominant ones are present in those individuals. And they have a communication with each other that they can't understand. It isn't even conscious, but they know what the other one is doing. They know what they're thinking. They know when they're dealing with pain and sorrow. Do you understand that? Now, and what T is saying is, as you deal with those things that you're dealing with with your vehicle, actually you're not dealing with them. It's just that they are lessons. You're, in a sense, you're dealing with them, but you're not dealing with them in the sense that you think you are. It's just the reason that you're dealing with them. It's not because of something bad that you have done. You're dealing with them in order to send out, to send out signals of correction. In other words, you're not down here in purgatory receiving a degree of punishment. You're, and you don't have a bad vehicle in order to, because you have been bad, or because you haven't grown very strong. You have different vehicles with lower characteristics in order to send out signals that would apply to all those to all humans of similar characteristics that have those same similar things to deal with. Just wanted to say it in other words.
And the stronger the feeling that you have inside you, it's an indication that it takes that much more effort for the world to overcome it, or to correct it, or to refine it. So it isn't that sometimes, let's say if you're dealing with something and you feel like it's so strong you can't take it, that you want to get out, walk out the door, or whatever, however it makes you feel, then what you ought to do is translate that in, well, I must work harder in this direction in order to do the task that I have been assigned to do, because it's going to take an awful lot of energy in order to do it. Just
sure.
Think what we had to do to get it started. I mean, T and O, in order to get this going, and we could not have done it without you all helping. And it hasn't been until this day that it has been that clearly defined in our minds that you came here with an assignment. You took a vehicle that required you to do that task, and in the process of overcoming what your vehicle has to overcome, you are doing your task.
Or in the process of working against it.
Right.
We call it overcoming, but actually you're not going to overcome it, but you're going to have it under control. And in the process of having it under control, you're putting out all kinds of control signals. Now, in the same way that your vehicle rebelled at some of its major primitive areas when you started applying it, and in the same way you can send signals to the world out there, they can send signals back to you of rebellion. And the same way that you in early stages sent signals to your own vehicle and it rebelled, and then you began to get better and better control, but you got less and less rebellion. But you were also sending stronger and stronger signals out there. And as they began to take root, they began to experience rebellion. Now, in the process, you are growing and you're becoming stronger, and so that you're not signaling only your own vehicle. In other words, think of it, when my vehicle is causing me difficulty in a certain area, the effort that I apply is not just for my vehicle. It's not even just for the strength of my next level mind. But the effort that I apply is primarily the purpose that I'm here. And that's the signal that I send back. The signal that I send out to all those who are dealing with that primitive area, to help them get above that step, to make another step upward. Do you follow that? And I think sometimes what happens, or we think sometimes what happens when you have been working on an area for a long time and you begin to feel like you're not making even the progress that you made before, is because you are feeling the return of rebellion from out there, which wasn't there before. It was confined mainly between you and the little outfit you were working with. And then for a while it was, maybe if you send out pretty good signals in the early stages of the game, it was not only you, but it was you and maybe the few that were picking up. Now let's say lots are picking up, trying to improve those areas. Then lots more are also experiencing rebellion. And that signal comes back. But you, in the meantime, are supposed to have grown more mature and stronger. And you're continuing to work in the same way that we tell you the same lessons over and over. Don't we tell you the same lessons over and over? But each time we come back 3 months later, 6 months later, it should mean something different to you, because you're looking at it from a different plateau. And the same thing happens as you deal with the same things that your vehicle has had to deal with. As it comes back to you, and you're working with it in repetition, you are each time touching a larger group in communication of working with that problem. And it's going to take more effort. And sometimes it's going to take a long time. Sometimes don't we sit here with hours just beating on the simplest lesson, and we maybe come back the next day and we're still on the same thing. But should we just give up because you didn't get it like that? And the same thing has got to be in your attitude. In other words, don't be so small-minded as to think when those negative signals are coming that they're simply your vehicle and they're simply for you and they're justification for a downer. That's being very small-minded. Think that if that is coming back to you, it's coming back to you because it's coming from those that you have faithfully sent that signal to. And now you're going to send it right back. You're going to turn it right into you're going to teach the lesson again. You're going to do it to your vehicle, but this time you're going to do it with the knowledge that in the effort you apply to your vehicle, it's got many, many more to affect by it than it had the first time. Now it's going to take a stronger current, and it's going to take a longer lasting current, and it may not show its success as readily as it did when you were dealing with a smaller number. There's one other little topic that is on my mind that I'm going to touch on just a second. The other day when I saw this little guy in space in his little Buck Rogers suit, I realized that what he is, at the moment that he is out there, if he had the capacity to say that for his suit to sustain him from an indefinite period, he would have for the first time reached independence. Do you understand that? He would have for the first time reached independence. In other words, why you're trying to get your mind, your next level mind, so dependable to live according to procedures and to want only procedures and to live according to the ways of the next level. It's because what the next level is trying to give you the gift of is total independence. If you could ever get that in its right place, it's just like the human world would think that you are not independent, that you're under the influence of your class. Little do they realize that they are under the influence of everything that surrounds them, not only their genes, but their neighborhood, their TV. They're under the influence of all those things. They have a very, very low level of independence. Now, what the next level is trying to help you grow to be is so dependable that you will have a trusted independence. In other words, you will, for the first time, have reached something that is not dependent upon anything. Now, your mind will always be, I am dependent upon my elder and his elder and so forth, because I want to grow and because I want more service. But when I saw that little astronaut, excuse me, controlling with buttons all these little different minute little thrusts of energy to make him go in a certain direction, and not, it was because he had really done his homework in the handling of that equipment, and because he was moving very delicately with it, that he was kept in a controlled situation. Now, if he'd wanted to be rebellious, he could have pushed one button too long and held it and just sailed off into space and never seen him again. But it was because he had no desire to go haywire. He had no desire to do anything except demonstrate perfect control. Now, if he can demonstrate perfect control, then he can serve. Do you follow what that amounts to? And if you can demonstrate when you are back in the next level perfect control, the greater you can demonstrate that, the more service doors are open to you.
And by doing this task that you're doing now will give you that
perfect control.
Perfect control.
Now, don't equate what you think is very poor control of your vehicle to perfect control, because that'll do you in right there. We're not.
Your main task right now is to keep your eye on your task of controlling, of doing what you can to overcome the things that the vehicle has to deal with. And that, in return, does what it's supposed to do out in the world, and the end result will give to you the perfect control. In other words, the perfect control is the main thing. Because as an end result of what you do here in trying to control your vehicle will give you perfect control.
That's right.
But you have to keep your eyes on controlling the vehicle if you can.
You're actually not even assigned to a vehicle that is capable of perfect control. And that's intentional in order to make you have work, constant work to do in increasing your effort. You understand that? It's intentional that you have a vehicle that is not capable, that is not controllable completely. Your effort would stop. Your growth would stop. Even if it required, 10 degrees of effort to get so-called perfect control, and if all you had to do was repetitiously apply 10 degrees of effort, there would still be no growth. Because the more you grow, the more you see the vehicle in a different light of judgment. Thus, the vehicle surprises you consistently by coming back with seemingly being uncontrolled in areas you thought you had well under control, or coming back in some area that you never even thought it had to deal with before. Plus the fact that you have a different perspective of a judgment value of what control is as you progress.
It's like putting the kids on things, trying to stop it totally and then have it changed around to go in a different way. Can you understand that? In other words, you have to stop something before you can get it to change. And then you start changing it to be the way that you want it to be. It's like building new genes. You have to stop the vibrations of that particular gene in order to make it not vibrate on that particular thing. And then you're able to reprogram it by putting new programs into the gym. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, but
Then that's a pretty big task that you have. And therefore,
for the world.
For the world.
Mhm.
So therefore you have to exert more effort. And it may be even overpower you sometimes. So much so that you feel like you just can't do it. But then you're not the only one that has that same task. There are others in the craft who have the same task of trying to control it. So you're not by yourself. It's the same way with sensuality. Let's say sometimes you feel like sensuality is just going to overpower you. Well, it's a pretty big thing when the whole world is based on sensuality.
And sending you those signals back in rebellion constantly.
And that's why just about everybody in the craft has that thing to deal with, because you send it, it takes that much effort to get it under control.
And your faithful effort in that direction will pay off.
You might have to listen to this tape 2 or 3 times to fully understand what we're saying, because it wasn't that clearly defined in my mind until I began to talk to you about it, and I don't know if it was the same way with Doe. And in other words, it seems to me like the next level was allowing us to see a little bit of the work that we had done. I'm talking about all of it, because I said, if you remember before, that we don't ever get any. You've done a good job from the next level, until we step onto a spacecraft and we're able to see everything. The way see everything from a different level, and really will be above it all and can see what has really happened in the world. We think we can see it now, but we can't see it as clearly. But then the next level came in and gave us a way to see how our work is, our work is coming, by saying that, by letting us know that we all have an assignment according to whatever we are dealing with at this time with our vehicle. So therefore, what Doe was saying earlier, don't let yourself get down because of what you're dealing with. Just exert more effort in that direction. At least you're doing something for the bad. If you should fall down on the job and leave us, that means the rest of us would have to step in and do it for you. And I'm sure you don't want to do that. Not this side of the game. Okay?
What T just brought up was, let me back up a second. We just discussed the fact that you're not going to be finished dealing with the things that you're dealing with as long as there are some out there still dealing with those things. In other words, your task, as long as you're here, is going to be to work on those things, because there will still be people in the world who are dealing with those things. It will come back to you as long as they still have those problems. So don't think it's going to be gone tomorrow, any of these problems. And then T brought up an interesting thing, saying it might be likely that the area that you have become so proficient in because of the tool that you were given for this task might very likely be a department area that you will work on at the completion of this particular task. In other words, when you get out of this vehicle and get back into a gardener that can work get back into helping the gardening process from a more distant relationship, you will probably work in the area that you've gotten experience in, because you've certainly gotten good experience in the areas in the primitive areas of your own vehicles. And so that's the purpose.
In other words, you can almost, in fact, you should know what department, where you will be assigned once you go back to the next level. If you have a whole bunch of things, then that must mean that you'll be in many departments.
Yeah. or a pretty
Which is
diversified department.
What's good about all this, in my mind, is that we've never known where you all would be assigned.
We've thought about it a lot.
We've thought about it, but we've never known it. And that sounds real good to me. So
Once
far, I don't
more?
know.
Once more?
Just for-
Turn it off once more?
Sure, I think
we were talking about how Dorothy brought up that that it gives him a new perspective, which helps him a lot in realizing that when he puts out effort on the areas of his own vehicle and it comes back, that he sees that he's got to do it again. And we said in a sense that it's a little wrong to kind of proposition yourself or to set up a situation where you say, if I have to deal with this tomorrow, I'm going to really be disappointed. Because, in other words, you're saying to the next level, I want a vacation. I don't want to work on these areas for a while, or I'd really be happy if I didn't have to work on them anymore. and yet you have been assigned to work on them. And you're graded by continuing to apply effort. In other words, if you've been assigned a green and a blue button, and you take your fingers off those buttons, and while your fingers are off those buttons, they light up. And your job is to push those buttons again. And you hold those buttons down until they go out again. And then you get a moment's rest, and you can take your fingers off of those buttons. But you can't say, I don't want those buttons to light up anymore, because if in a sense you're saying, I don't want to accomplish what you've sent me to accomplish. I don't want to help those humans out in those areas any longer. I want peace. I want to rest from it. Funny thing is, that's about the most ridiculous thing he says, because there's no way you can get any rest from it. You could walk out the door, leave the class, do whatever you want to do. You're not going to get any rest from it. It's in your genes. It's in the world's genes. But you would cease to be a tool of the next level, applying pressure to change and upgrading or evolutionarily changing those areas if you choose to no longer push those buttons in effort to change them, to improve them, to upgrade them, better control in those areas. Do you follow that? So, in a sense, don't give yourself those ultimatums anymore. That if I don't see signs of this ceasing, these things I'm dealing with, if I don't see signs of them ceasing, I'm going to quit. Or I'm going to be so depressed. Because...
another thing, though, because of depression.
That means they'd have to move you to another department. And have to give you a new set of things to deal with. Oh, my. So you might as well just show that you can continue to apply effort to the ones that you've got.